Hey, what's up? I'm Technologics, and today we're taking a look at the iconic Apple iPhone 4S. How does it hold up in 2017? The iPhone 4S was released in October of 2011 and shipped with iOS 5. It had the then revolutionary Siri. I'll say revolutionary because I think it was, who has more or less been replicated on many platforms with things like Google Assistant, Cortana, and most recently Samsung's Bixby. Now we could debate on how much of an impact Siri really made, but I think we can all agree Siri was a big deal. And this is the phone that introduced that, so that's cool. So the first thing I'll get out of the way with the 4S is the size. It's small. It's pretty small. It's a 3.5 inch screen and it has a resolution of 640 by 960. So while the size of the phone is pretty tiny, especially compared to the iPhone 6 and better, the display still looks pretty good, with its 330 pixels per inch, causing everything on the phone to be crisp and sharp. It's not too good by today's standards, but it's still more than acceptable, especially for a 6-year-old phone, almost 6-year-old phone. The design of the iPhone 4S is one that I really miss. It has a glass front and back with a stainless steel frame. It's kind of thick, at least in comparison to newer iPhones, which does make it a little chunky to hold, but honestly, it's not too bad. It could have been a lot worse. It's 140 grams or almost 5 ounces, which does make it a little heavier than most devices today. Really not a big deal, but it definitely doesn't feel like a modern smartphone. To be fair, as I said before, this thing is nearly 6 years old, so I think we can give it a bit of slack. This is my favorite design ever for a smartphone, the iPhone 4 and the iPhone 4S, and I'm really happy to say that the iPhone 8 is supposedly going back to a similar design for this. So fingers crossed, hopefully that'll happen, but yeah, hopefully. Moving on, the 4S comes in 2 color options, white or black. Pretty plain and simple, just choose which you like better and you're good. I do prefer the black, and you can see the difference here with my iPhone 4 beside my 4S. Actually, let's really quickly talk about the difference between the 4S and the 4, because they look pretty much identical. So if you ever need to tell the difference, there's one key thing that gives it away. On the top of the phone, the 4 has an antenna band right next to the headphone jack, while the 4S has 2 antenna bands on the top sides of the phone, or the top of the sides of the phone. Well, you can see it here. So yeah, other than that and the model numbers on the back, it's pretty hard to tell them apart. There are lots of different storage options you can get with the 4S, being 8, 16, 32 or 64 gigabytes. Alright, so while that's all good and fun, it's not really too relevant to 2017, so let's keep going here and talk about the camera. It's actually surprisingly good with 8 megapixels and 1080p video at 30 frames per second. I was able to get some pretty nice shots, not gonna lie, I'm very surprised. It's not iPhone 7 quality, but it's still pretty legit. So if you're not terribly concerned about the camera, this phone will do perfectly fine. Battery wise, the 4S is nothing special with 1432 milliamps. It might get you through the day with little to moderate use, but if you're actually using your phone, then you might need to recharge at some point during the day. The 4S holds the Apple A5 chip and half a gigabyte of RAM, so speed wise this thing really shows its age. The amount of memory really is its biggest issue here, as it has a lot of trouble keeping up with iOS 9, which segues us into the operating system. The iPhone 4S runs up to iOS 9.3.5 and honestly it's terrible. It does not run iOS 9 well at all. It's slow and frankly not a good user experience. I'm quite disappointed with Apple for this. Maybe they could have left it with iOS 8. I don't know if that would have been faster. I don't know how exactly they could fix this or could have fixed this, but it's tough to use. It's frustrating. Here I'm waiting for the App Store and eventually I just give up. I don't know why it wasn't working, but it gives you an idea of what the 4S experience is like. And the worst of it is that iOS 9.3.5 doesn't have a jailbreak. Now mind you, if you're on an earlier version of iOS 9, you actually can jailbreak it, and with that you can downgrade to iOS 6, which is much faster. And hopefully I'll eventually be able to showcase that for you guys, but at the moment there is no jailbreak for iOS 9.3.5, and yeah, there's not really one on the horizon either, so one day maybe, hopefully, but for now you're stuck with 9.3.5. It's really slow. I'd imagine to use daily especially, that would really suck. For that reason, I'm just gonna jump ahead here and say I'm not recommending buying the iPhone 4S. Loading things like YouTube videos or whatever is just plain painful sometimes. Now it is worth mentioning that this device functions just fine, and there are some benefits to iOS 9, mainly being app support. At the moment, pretty much any app you will find on the App Store will run on the iPhone 4S, which is great. Now when it comes to the basics of the phone, being texting and calling, the 4S can absolutely do that. So if you're on a very tight budget, the 4S is an option. To summarize really quickly, it's slow but runs most current apps, the battery isn't great, the camera is actually decent, the design is beautiful, and the screen is small but looks good. So should you buy the 4S? As said earlier, no, you shouldn't. But it's fairly cheap at $50 US for a nice condition 16GB model. So if you absolutely have to, then it's cheap. In the end, I would spend a little bit more for an iPhone 5 or 5C, probably. I think that's the cheapest iPhone I would recommend getting right now, even though it won't get iOS 10. So that might just be me though. To be fair, this phone is, again, 6 years old. So, you know, you can't expect great things from it, and it would be foolish to expect that. Considering how old it is, this thing performs amazingly. And, you know, if you need something that just does the basics, it can absolutely do that. What do you think of this phone? Is it worth buying in 2017? Is it actually a legitimate smartphone today? Let me know in the comments down below. Please consider liking and subscribing for more content just like this. Coincidentally, this 4S is locked to Bell, which is my cell phone carrier. So if this video reaches, I don't know, 150 likes? Is that too little? Let's go with 300. That's a lot of likes. 300 likes. Oh gosh. I will use the iPhone 4S for an entire week as my main driver if this video gets 300 likes. I usually use an iPhone 6 for reference, so this is definitely a huge downgrade. For the record, I don't want to do this, which is why I'm setting the bar pretty high. But if we can get to 300 likes, I'll give it a shot and film it all for you guys. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I hope you have a great day, and with that being said, I'll see you all next time. I wonder how many likes my last 4S video got. Oh, crap.